David, I'm looking right now at WTI crude traded on the NYMEX at $73.46. Is this a good time to start refilling the Strategic Petroleum Reserve?
So we have been, and we're going to be opportunistic, and we're going to take every advantage when the price is at the right level to make a good deal for taxpayers. We're going to refill. So we are refilling as much as we can. We've been doing that for the last several months, and at this price level, we'll keep doing it.
And it's been about a 3 million barrel a month purchase that the Energy Department has been making. Do you plan to accelerate that, though, as prices do continue to fall?
So that is the physical limit of how much we can buy back. We've got some lifetime extensions in some of our caverns. We actually have 4 separate facilities, 4 separate sites for our Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So we will be doing at least 3 million barrels, and we hope we can bring more capacity online at these price levels to buy as much as we can to refill, to make sure we've got that available when we need it in the future. So we'll buy as much back as we possibly can, but there are some physical constraints given the way the caverns are set up.
We've been talking a lot about some of the consolidation in the shale patch with a number of companies coming to the fore, the latest coming this morning. Is this a good thing from the Energy Department standpoint or a bad thing?
So as you know, a lot of decisions that are made in the energy sector, certainly in our country, are private sector decisions along those lines, and we're certainly seeing that happen as well. I think one good thing we've certainly seen is a focus from a lot of companies, including here at the climate conference, on reducing methane emissions. This is something we've been after for quite some time. Our EPA colleagues recently announced some big news here in terms of the new regulatory structure to really do what's the biggest no-brainer, I think, in the history of no-brainers on climate, is reduce methane emissions in the oil and gas sector. So we're really stepping up on that, and we're seeing some companies step up on that beyond what they're required to do in the U.S.
I'll take your point on it. There's some real traction on that. You know, I want to go back here. You were an advisor fresh out of Virginia to Senators Biden, Senator Conrad. You've had 18 jobs in energy. You've arguably, David Turk, of Republicans and Democrats have more experience than anybody breathing today. How did we get to being an OPEC-sized oil nation? All of a sudden, we're like as big as a rock, or, you know, I'll let you decide what it is. How did we get to this hydrocarbon success that America is today?
Well, first of all, Tom, thanks for the compliment. I'll make sure my mom sees this and hears such a nice compliment. I think the short answer is we are a private sector market, and unless you have federal laws, federal restrictions, the private sector will do what the private sector will do, and they found a lot of profit and a lot of opportunity, including and especially in shale in our country.
What do you say to the critics of the Biden administration that it is not private sector centric?
So look at the numbers, look at where the production levels are at. We also need to, of course, focus on the emissions coming from all of that oil and gas, not only that produced in the U.S., but around the world. And one disappointment I have to say here at the climate conference is, while we've made some progress on methane emissions, that's a big deal, I don't think there's as much focus as there needs to be on oil and gas Scope 3 emissions. That is, those emissions produced when that oil, that gasoline goes into the atmosphere. Scope 3 emissions are actually 10 times the amount of Scope 1 and Scope 2 for many oil and gas companies. So we need a lot more focus on Scope 3 emissions. We need a real credible plan for dealing with those emissions.
David, does it make it kind of awkward for the U.S. to have a leadership position in reducing emissions at COP28, given the fact that U.S. production has increased to a record pace, even as it's cut in places like Saudi Arabia and Qatar?
So I feel incredibly proud to be part of this historic Biden administration when it comes to climate change. In fact, we're actually seeing our emissions decrease in the U.S. 3% in 2023, despite GDP growth healthier than just about every other country in the world. And what you've seen is, with the historic pieces of legislation, all we're doing in this administration, we're expected already, just in these few short years of policy, to actually double our emission reductions by 2030, 40% plus reductions just from the actions from this administration. That's an impressive record, and we need to do more. All countries around the world need to do more. more given the climate challenges that we face and we're already seeing in our world today.